Hello and welcome to Aki News, where we tell it as it is, unfiltered and uncensored. Today joining us is the one and only Robert Spencer, is the director of Jihad Watch, a Shellman Fellow at David Howard's Freedom Center, and author of 23 books. His latest, Did Muhammad Exist? Hello, Robert.
Hello, Annie. Always good to talk to you. How are you?
I am hanging in there, and I am very grateful that you and Jihad Watch are still with us, because I personally just check Jihad Watch all day long, and now we have you to give us all the updates. Let's work our way backward. 3 explosions outside of Cabal International Airport. Yes. I guess the latest on Jihad Watch says at least 10 Americans dead, 20 wounded.
Yeah,
all the details.
Latest is that the death toll is up to 13 Americans and is likely to rise even further. It appears to be an ISIS, Islamic State attack, and this is something that, of course, has been warned for quite some time, but the Biden administration is much more concerned with making sure that our military has a sufficient number of transgender soldiers and not with actually using it to defend Americans.
Wow. Okay. So technically, Taliban conquered Afghanistan, and Taliban started their so-called government of Islamic Emirate Afghanistan. But now ISIS is doing their own thing too. And as reported again on Jihad Watch, also Al-Qaeda members are in charge of certain positions. So is it safe to say that 3 ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Taliban are all aligned to rule Afghanistan now?
Yes, there's no doubt about that. People think that they're opposed to one another, but this is not the case. They're just different groups working for the same goal. That goal is Islamic rule, not just in Afghanistan, but over the whole world. And the Taliban works in Afghanistan. ISIS and Al-Qaeda, of course, work in Afghanistan and elsewhere as well. But they all work toward this, they will all work with having this same goal in mind. And consequently, for ISIS to carry out this attack under the auspices of the Taliban is an indication of their cooperation at this point, that the Taliban is using ISIS to strike at the remaining Americans in Kabul.
Here's a short question. Where does Hezbollah and IRGC stand?
Well, of course, Iran and its clients like Hezbollah they are standing by and watching this, no doubt, quite happily. Iran has actually, even though it is Shiite, has funded the Taliban in the past, as well as Al-Qaeda. And not many people know this, but this is not some crazy conspiracy theory. This has been established in American court that the Islamic Republic of Iran actually aided in the 9/11 attacks by means of Hezbollah. It was Ahmad Mounieh, who was a Hezbollah operative, who helped the 9/11 hijackers get into Afghanistan for training and then out again without any trace that they'd been there or in Iran, so that they could get to New York and carry out the attacks. And so Iran was involved in aiding Al-Qaeda at that point. And there is every indication, of course, that they will do their best to take advantage of the situation in Afghanistan now.
And this is a little far back in years, but isn't it also true that an Iranian Shia imam came to America, gave the speech against gays, and you should go kill them out of mercy right before the gay club shooting happened in Miami? I mean, in Florida?
In Orlando, Florida, that's right. It was a few years back, 2015, I believe, or 16, and 49 people murdered in the Pulse nightclub, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. And you're right, in that area, right before that, a Shiite imam had spoken about how homosexuals have to be killed. So it's possible. It's never been established, of course, because our law enforcement and intelligence agencies are determined to ignore and obfuscate this kind of thing. They would never even want to discover whether this was incitement to these murders, because that would make Islam look bad. And the job one of our intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies is to make sure that Islam doesn't look bad. So that it's never been investigated, but it's very much within the realm of possibility that Omar Mateen, the shooter in Orlando, was motivated by that sermon.
Okay, let's go back to Afghanistan and disaster of Biden there. billions of dollars weaponry was left behind. And I heard you on another interview mentioning that there's a good possibility a bunch of it is going to Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran. Where do you think that's going to go from there?
Well, there were some reports initially. I haven't seen any follow-ups, but of course, it's difficult in the nature of the case for there to be follow-ups of this on a story of this kind. But there were some reports of American materiel being spotted heading toward Iran. And if those were indeed true and accurate reports, then it's almost certain that this is going to end up in the hands of Hamas and Hezbollah. Hamas, of course, is a Sunni group, but here again, its chief financier is the Islamic Republic of Iran, because Iran, working on principles that are shared across all Islamic sects, wants Israel destroyed above all. And so they aid the jihad terror groups against Israel and will likely use any material they get out of Afghanistan in order to do that. It's the same thing as when Barack Obama gave billions to the Islamic Republic of Iran. They used it to finance jihad terror groups, not to aid their own people. And so demonstrators in Iran over the past few weeks have been saying, don't help Gaza, don't help Lebanon, help Iran, because they're tired of the mullahs ignoring their own people in their efforts to aid the global jihad. But of course, the global jihad is their highest priority, not Iranians.
Of course. Of course. And that's the problem. I get this question all the time of why. I'm like, well, people of Iran, average Iranian people, never really cared for this whole Sharia thing. So they dropped to the bottom of priority list. They're not going to join this movement. There are few, but the majority of the country prefer to just get rid of the mullahs and move on with their lives. So they're not going to get any priority over Palestinians who are willing to blow themselves up while taking few Jews with them.
Yeah, I remember when I was researching my book, The Complete Infidel's Guide to Iran, a few years ago, I came across account after account of the hypocrisy of Iranian society, that it's a Sharia state, but behind closed doors, there's alcohol, the women take off the hijabs, people try to live as normal lives as they possibly can, and it's all just a matter of appearances so that they avoid running afoul of the police.
Exactly. Okay, here's a question with what we just established: ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Hamas. What is Israel going to face if this alliance continues?
Oh, well, it's certain eventually that Israel will be attacked. Iran is working toward nuclear weapons, of course, and if they get them, and of course the Biden administration wants to help them get them, then Israel will be attacked. That's what the weapons would be for. There really isn't any other reason why Iran would want nuclear weapons or think that they even need nuclear weapons. It's not as if they have some formidable enemy in the region. Iraq used to be, but it's a basket case now, and part of it is a client state of the Islamic Republic. So it's not as if Iraq is a threat anymore since Saddam Hussein has been gone, and they don't face any other threats in the region. It's just that they want to destroy Israel because of the Islamic principle encapsulated in the Quran, drive them out from where they drove you out. It's a historical myth that the Israelis drove out the Palestinian Arabs, but it is widely believed, of course, in Iran as well as in other places. And consequently, Iranians, or at least those who believe fervently in Islam, believe they have a responsibility before Allah to destroy Israel because it's commanded in the Quran, drive them out from where they drove you out.
Since we talked about Quran, here's a personal question. If that's true, why is it that exactly 131 times on the Quran it says, "Oh, Bani Israel, sons of Israel," but never ever does it say, "Oh, Bani Palestine"?
Well, now you're thinking too much. And remember, chapter 5, verse 101 of the Quran says that you shouldn't ask questions, because by asking questions, some people have lost their faith. And so this kind of rational inquiry is discouraged in the Quran itself. But yes, the reality is the Quran speaks in numerous passages about the children of Israel. There are 8 or 9 retellings of the story of Moses and Pharaoh, with various details different in each one. There are many, many instances of the Jews being addressed. The problem is that the Jews in the Quran are excoriated as the enemies of Allah and as having rebelled from his guidance and become the worst enemies of the Muslims, as chapter 5, verse 82 says. Consequently, those passages about the children of Israel are generally read as being both a sign of the perfidy of the Jews. And I remember an ex-Muslim from Somalia saying that he'd never met a Jew in Somalia, and when he went to America, he was surprised to see they were sort of ordinary people. They didn't have horns, and they weren't walking around with fangs or something, you know, because the Quran demonizes them to such a degree. So the passages about the children of Israel are a sign of how evil the Jews are, and any promises given to the children of Israel devolve to the Muslims as the true embodiment of the people who obey the teachings of Moses. Because remember, in the Quran, Moses is a Muslim and Jesus is a Muslim, and they teach Islam. It's their followers who twisted and hijacked their teachings to create Judaism and Christianity.
Oh, all the hijacking going on with Islam. Okay, let's go quickly to Biden administration. Pardon my not so well phrased question, but what the hell is Biden administration doing?
Well, the Biden administration is a bunch of globalists, socialists, internationalists. They don't care about America. They don't care about Americans. They only care about lining their own pockets. They're desperately corrupt, and about aiding in a socialist internationalist takeover of the United States. Consequently, they don't care that Americans have been killed in Afghanistan at the airport today. John Kirby, the head of the spokesman for the Pentagon, issued a statement saying our thoughts and prayers are with those who were killed and the families. And I thought that that is just the epitome of a callous and unfeeling response, but it epitomizes the indifference of the Biden administration to the plight of ordinary Americans, not just in Afghanistan, but here at home as well.
Unbelievable. Okay, I'm sure you already heard of this. The woman in gender equality minister of Justin Trudeau's government in Canada, Maya Monsef, has called Taliban her brothers. And then also there's a tweet of her out where she mentions that Sharia fascinates her. I would love to hear your thoughts on her.
Well, she's an interesting individual. She's a Canadian government official, the minister of this bogus department, for women and gender equality or whatever it is. And she is actually someone who was born in Iran of Afghan parents. She's of Shiite Hazara stock. The Hazaras are a Shiite group in Afghanistan who were persecuted by the Sunnis, including the Taliban, and went to Iran. And many of them, that is, many of them are still in Afghanistan. But Miriam Monsaf's parents went to Iran, where she was born. And then she moved to Canada. But the thing is that she, even though she has experienced, or her family experienced, or her people experienced the persecution from groups such as the Taliban, and probably from the Taliban itself, nonetheless, she is more of a leftist than she is a Hazara. And so she refers to the Taliban as our brothers. It's in line with the left's alignment with the global jihad, that the left actually is so anti-American at this point and so much against Western civilization that they see a group like the Taliban as allies. And so you see it in the international media all the time, that is much gentler and much kinder to groups like the Taliban than it is to supporters of Trump.
Interesting. Okay, before we go, I want to make sure you tell our audience about your most recent book, because I really think that is very relevant to everything that's going on. So please tell us about it.
Yeah, Did Muhammad Exist is the revised and expanded version of a book that I did a few years ago. A lot of new material in the new book. It is an exploration of the early history of Islam, and it shows that the stories of Muhammad that Muslims believe actually have very little historical reliability. And it looks as if Muhammad as the prophet of Islam may never even have existed at all. Of course, the implications of this are enormous. Shabir Ali, an Islamic apologist in Canada, made a video supposedly refuting my book. All he said was that it was fringe scholars instead of mainstream scholars that I was relying on, which is like saying my scholars are red and yours are green. But in any case, he said, if Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not exist, then there's no reason to be a Muslim. And that's the key. That's why this book is important, and why it is something that I hope gets a wide audience of people who will understand the extraordinary implications of the historical discoveries that are in it.
Agreed. Absolutely. Very important and very relevant nowadays, because all of these Muslims who are killing non-Muslims and bad Muslims and raping girls and burning women alive, maybe they decide to stop being Muslim when they come to realize, hey, maybe Muhammad didn't exist. Robert Spencer, last words of wisdom goes to you before we leave for today.
Well, the situation is very dark right now, and the Biden administration is proving to be much worse than I think even its greatest detractors expected. But I would exhort you all to continue to have hope, to recognize that this has been an extraordinary period in American history, because even just 5 years ago, most people, I would venture to say, had no idea of the existence or the power of this traitor class that is in control today in Washington. But now we know. And so we can break it, and it can be broken. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for everything you are doing, Robert. It is very crucial for everybody to go to Jihad Watch literally every hour, because you're putting out information nonstop. You are making sure we are aware of what's happening here and in Afghanistan. So for that, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Annie, and likewise.
Absolutely. And to our lovely audience, make sure to share this video everywhere. Right after that, go to jihadwatch.org. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, because they send out daily emails where you will be informed. On that note, stay safe and goodbye.